The smarter you become, the quieter your world gets. Conversations feel shallow. People feel predictable. Connection feels expensive. And you start asking yourself a disturbing question. Is intelligence a gift or a sentence? This video solves one problem: why increased awareness isolates you, and how to turn that isolation into psychological power instead of silent suffering. Intelligence does not begin by adding knowledge. It begins by subtracting comfort. The first thing it removes is illusion. An illusion, though rarely respected, is a primary currency through which human beings bond. Most social harmony is not built on truth, but on mutually agreed distortions. People connect by pretending not to see what they see, by smoothing sharp realities into acceptable shapes, by sacrificing accuracy for emotional ease. Intelligence interrupts this process. It makes illusion difficult to tolerate and impossible to fully participate in. As perception sharpens, the ability to lie to oneself weakens, and with that loss comes a quiet estrangement from others. The average conversation is not an exchange of ideas. It is a ritual of reassurance. Words are chosen not for precision, but for safety. Opinions are shaped not by reality, but by social survival. When intelligence enters a room, it disrupts this fragile economy. The intelligent individual listens more than they speak, and when they do speak, their words carry an unintended weight. They do not exaggerate enthusiasm when none exists. They do not pretend agreement to maintain warmth. They do not perform emotional theater to signal belonging. This absence of performance is interpreted as disinterest, arrogance, or hostility, even when none is intended. Illusion serves a biological function. It protects the ego from collapse. It allows people to feel competent, moral, important, and secure even when evidence suggests otherwise. Intelligence, however, functions like an uninvited light. It reveals inconsistencies between what people say and what they do, between what they believe and what benefits them. The intelligent mind notices patterns others survive by ignoring. It sees repetition in behavior, predictability in outrage, self-interest hiding behind virtue. Once seen, these patterns cannot be unseen. And once unseen illusions are gone, social participation becomes costly. Most bonds are maintained through shared delusions. Friendship often depends on overlooking flaws. Loyalty depends on selective memory. Love depends on idealization. Intelligence threatens all three. It introduces accuracy where generosity once lived. It replaces fantasy with assessment. The intelligent person does not necessarily judge more harshly, but they judge more clearly, and clarity is rarely welcomed. People sense this awareness instinctively. They feel exposed, even if nothing is said. The intelligent individual becomes someone before whom masks feel heavier, roles feel fragile, and self-deception feels unsafe. This is why intelligence often produces silence rather than applause. The intelligent individual learns early that honesty reduces warmth, not because truth is cruel, but because it destabilizes emotional agreements that others rely on. They learn that many conversations require false enthusiasm, artificial outrage, or shared irrational optimism to function smoothly. Refusing these rituals creates friction. Over time, the intelligent individual speaks less, not out of shyness, but out of efficiency. There is no reward in conversations that demand self-betrayal as the price of entry. Social life is not designed for depth, it is designed for cohesion. Illusion is the adhesive. Intelligence dissolves adhesive. When illusion collapses, so does the ease of belonging. The intelligent person begins to feel like an observer rather than a participant, watching people repeat narratives they secretly doubt, defend beliefs they barely understand, and attack truths that threaten emotional stability. This observation creates distance. Distance becomes habit. Habit becomes isolation. This isolation is not dramatic. It is quiet. It appears as fewer messages, shorter conversations, longer pauses before responding. It feels like being slightly out of sync with the world, as if everyone else is moving to music you can hear but cannot enjoy. The intelligent individual is not superior. They are simply incompatible with illusion-dependent systems. Their refusal to pretend is interpreted as rejection. Their neutrality is interpreted as coldness. Their restraint is interpreted as judgment. Over time, intelligence trains the individual to withdraw voluntarily, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. They understand that most social bonds require tolerance for inaccuracy they no longer possess. They stop explaining themselves, because explanation itself becomes exhausting. They realize that being understood is less likely than being misinterpreted, and so they conserve energy by choosing solitude over performance, silence over distortion, observation over participation, knowing that illusion may bring company, but clarity demands distance, and distance reshapes perception, behavior, and identity in ways that cannot be reversed once the mind has crossed the threshold where illusion no longer feels safe, believable, or worth sustaining. Awareness does not announce itself loudly. It arrives quietly as a gradual loss of emotional reflex. Situations that once triggered automatic reactions begin to feel transparent. Praise feels calculated. Anger feels performative. Sympathy feels conditional. This shift is subtle but irreversible. Emotional awareness does not numb feeling. It reorganizes it. And in doing so, it creates an invisible divide between those who still live through emotional impulse and those who now observe it from a distance. Most people connect through emotional shortcuts. They bond through shared outrage, collective fear, mutual validation, and synchronized optimism. These shortcuts reduce complexity and create instant alignment. Awareness interrupts this process by introducing interpretation where reaction once lived. The aware individual no longer reacts immediately. They pause, analyze motive, predict outcome. This delay alone creates incompatibility. In emotional systems, speed equals sincerity. Hesitation is mistaken for indifference. Reflection is mistaken for detachment. As awareness grows, dependency weakens. The individual no longer needs constant reassurance to regulate self-worth. They no longer outsource emotional stability to others. This independence appears threatening. Many relationships are unconsciously built on exchange agreements. I validate you, you validate me. I share your fears, you share mine. When one side no longer requires this exchange, the bond destabilizes. The aware individual becomes difficult to read, difficult to manipulate, difficult to emotionally hook. People sense this absence of need and interpret it as emotional unavailability rather than emotional maturity. Awareness also exposes emotional inefficiency. The aware mind sees how much human behavior is driven by avoidance rather than desire, by insecurity rather than conviction. It notices how often people speak to protect their self-image rather than to communicate truth. Over time, this recognition alters empathy. The aware individual still understands emotion, but no longer indulges it blindly. They can see pain without being pulled into it, fear without absorbing it, anger without mirroring it. This emotional containment creates further distance. Emotional resonance, the mechanism through which most bonds form, weakens. In groups, awareness becomes isolating. Group emotion depends on contagion. Mood spread through imitation. Opinions solidify through repetition. Awareness resists contagion. The aware individual feels the pressure to align, but does not feel the compulsion. They can sit in excitement without amplifying it, in panic without escalating it, in outrage without contributing fuel. This neutrality is misread as lack of loyalty or lack of passion. In reality, it is a byproduct of understanding emotional mechanics too well to surrender to them automatically. Romantic relationships amplify this incompatibility. Attraction often thrives on projection. People fall in love not with reality, but with emotional narratives they construct around another person. Awareness disrupts projection. The aware individual sees both strengths and flaws simultaneously. Idealization feels dishonest. Drama feels unnecessary. Emotional volatility feels avoidable. This stability, paradoxically, can feel boring or threatening to those accustomed to intensity as proof of connection. The aware individual becomes less reactive, less jealous, less desperate. These qualities, while healthy, can be perceived as emotional distance in a culture that equates turbulence with depth. As awareness increases, the individual becomes selective with emotional exposure. They do not suppress feeling, but they ration it. They choose when to engage and when to remain internal. This selectivity protects mental clarity but reduces emotional accessibility. People who rely on constant emotional feedback feel deprived. Conversations begin to feel one-sided. The aware individual listens more than they disclose. They respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. This asymmetry shifts power dynamics. The one who feels less becomes harder to control. Eventually, awareness creates a new emotional baseline. The individual is less reactive to praise and less wounded by criticism. This emotional independence weakens social glue. Praise no longer binds. Criticism no longer disciplines. Approval no longer motivates. Without these levers, many relationships lose their function. People drift away, not because of conflict, but because the emotional economy no longer balances. The aware individual cannot pretend to need what they do not need. This is not emotional coldness. It is emotional self-sufficiency. And self-sufficiency isolates in a world built on mutual emotional reliance. The aware individual becomes a psychological foreigner, fluent in emotional language but no longer governed by it. They understand others deeply but are understood less in return. This asymmetry creates loneliness not from absence of people, but from absence of emotional equivalence, where depth meets surface, clarity meets noise, and restraint meets impulsivity, leaving the aware individual surrounded yet fundamentally alone. Society does not fear intelligence in its raw form. It fears the consequences of being exposed by it. What threatens social order is not knowledge, but clarity. Clarity destabilizes narratives, weakens authority, and reveals the invisible agreements that keep groups functioning. Those who see too clearly do not need to rebel. Their mere presence unsettles the system. As a result, society does not confront them openly. It isolates them quietly. Most social structures survive on repetition. Beliefs are reinforced not because they are accurate, but because they are shared. Traditions persist not because they are rational, but because they are familiar. Power maintains itself through normalization. The individual who sees clearly interrupts this rhythm. They question what others accept automatically. They hesitate where others conform instinctively. This hesitation introduces friction. Friction signals danger to collective stability. The group responds not with argument, but with distance. Isolation is a subtle form of social discipline. It does not require punishment, censorship, or exile. It operates through omission. Invitations stop arriving. Opinions are no longer requested. Presence becomes optional. The individual is not attacked. They are bypassed. This is more effective than confrontation because it denies the individual a platform to influence or disrupt. Society rewards compliance with belonging and withdraws it from those who refuse to fully participate in shared illusions. Those who see clearly often underestimate how threatening neutrality can be. They believe silence is harmless. In reality, silence in the presence of illusion is perceived as judgment. The one who does not affirm is assumed to oppose. The one who does not celebrate is assumed to criticize. The one who does not panic is assumed to feel superior. Clarity creates asymmetry. The observer knows more about the observed than the observed knows about the observer. This imbalance generates discomfort. Discomfort demands resolution. Isolation becomes a resolution. Social hierarchies depend on emotional management. Leaders require admiration. Institutions require trust. Cultural narratives require belief. The clear-seeing individual disrupts these emotional currents. They do not offer blind admiration. They do not grant automatic trust. They do not emotionally invest in narratives without evidence. This restraint weakens symbolic authority. Even without direct challenge, their detachment signals that authority is optional. This implication alone is intolerable to systems built on emotional obedience. Work environments reveal this mechanism clearly. Intelligence is welcome when it improves efficiency, but resisted when it questions direction. The individual who sees inefficiencies, contradictions, or ethical compromises is labeled difficult rather than insightful. Their clarity slows momentum. Their questions expose fragility. Instead of addressing the issue, the system minimizes the individual. Promotions bypass them. Influence narrows. Their role becomes technical rather than strategic. Isolation preserves the structure while neutralizing the threat. The same pattern appears in social circles. Groups are maintained through shared assumptions and unspoken rules. The clear-seeing individual notices these rules. They see how humor enforces hierarchy, how gossip regulates behavior, how moral outrage masks envy. Their awareness makes participation feel artificial. They laugh less, react less, contribute selectively. This deviation marks them as out of sync. The group does not expel them directly. It simply moves around them. Isolation also serves a psychological function for the group. The presence of someone who sees clearly forces self-reflection. Self-reflection is uncomfortable. It threatens identity. By isolating the clear-seeing individual, the group restores emotional equilibrium. The uncomfortable mirror is removed. Normality returns. This process is rarely conscious. People believe they are responding naturally, not defensively, but the result is the same. The one who sees too clearly is left alone with their perception. Over time, this isolation reshapes the individual. At first, it feels like rejection. Then it becomes confirmation. The individual realizes that clarity carries a social cost. They understand that belonging is conditional upon blindness. This realization hardens independence. They stop seeking validation from structures that cannot tolerate their presence. They withdraw not in defeat, but in recognition. They see that society does not reward truth, but manageability. Isolation, then, is not evidence of failure but of incompatibility. The individual who sees clearly does not fit into systems designed to function on partial awareness. Their exile is not accidental. It is structural. Society preserves itself by distancing those who expose its mechanisms, leaving the clear-seeing individual outside the circle, observing the machinery without illusion, without protection, and without the comfort of belonging, standing alone not because they lack value, but because their vision cannot be accommodated by a world that survives on not seeing too much. Loneliness is often misunderstood as a deficiency, a wound created by rejection or social failure. In reality, for the highly intelligent, loneliness is not an accident but an outcome. It emerges gradually as perception refines and attachments thin. Each increase in understanding narrows the field of emotional compatibility. What remains is not emptiness, but space. And space, though quiet, is demanding. It forces confrontation with the self without distraction. Intelligence strips away external noise. As illusions dissolve and emotional dependence weakens, the individual becomes less anchored to others for meaning. This detachment does not eliminate desire for connection, it transforms it. Superficial interaction loses its appeal. Validation loses its power. The individual begins to crave coherence over company. This preference is misinterpreted as withdrawal, but it is in fact a reorientation. The center of gravity shifts inward. Loneliness marks the moment when the mind becomes self-sustaining. Thought no longer needs constant reinforcement through conversation. Ideas mature internally. Reflection replaces reaction. The intelligent individual becomes capable of extended solitude without psychological decay. This capacity is rare. Most people experience solitude as deprivation. The intelligent experience it as amplification. In silence, patterns sharpen. Memory reorganizes. Insight accumulates. Loneliness becomes a crucible rather than a void. This stage is uncomfortable because it removes social anesthesia. Without constant interaction, unresolved questions surface. Insecurities can no longer hide behind distraction. The intelligent individual must face their own contradictions, fears, and limitations. This confrontation is unavoidable. Loneliness demands honesty. There is no audience to impress, no group to absorb responsibility. The self becomes both observer and observed. This internal doubling strengthens psychological autonomy. As loneliness deepens, external approval loses relevance. The individual no longer measures worth through recognition or acceptance. Self-evaluation replaces social evaluation. This shift produces inner stability but external invisibility. The intelligent individual may appear detached, unambitious, or aloof, but internally they operate by a different metric. They are no longer negotiating identity with the crowd. Identity becomes a private construction. Loneliness also refines desire. Without social pressure, the individual can distinguish between genuine interest and conditioned craving. Many ambitions dissolve when no one is watching. Many relationships lose urgency when validation is removed. What remains is more deliberate. The intelligent individual becomes selective not out of arrogance, but out of clarity. Time and attention are treated as finite resources rather than social obligations. This solitude creates power quietly. A person who is comfortable alone cannot be easily manipulated. Fear of abandonment loses leverage. Social threats lose force. The individual is less susceptible to coercion through inclusion or exclusion. This independence is destabilizing to others. People sense it without understanding it. The lonely, intelligent individual becomes unpredictable because their behavior is no longer regulated by approval. Loneliness also changes how the individual relates to truth. Without the need to protect social standing, they can pursue accuracy without compromise. They can hold unpopular conclusions without anxiety. They can revise beliefs without fear of embarrassment. This intellectual freedom is costly socially but invaluable internally. The mind becomes a closed system, capable of self-correction without external pressure. At its final stage, loneliness is no longer felt as pain but as distance, a calm separation between the individual and the crowd. Empathy remains, but entanglement dissolves. The intelligent individual can engage with others without being absorbed by them. They can enter social spaces without seeking belonging. They can leave without loss. This flexibility marks psychological sovereignty. Loneliness is not meant to be cured at this stage. Attempts to escape it often result in regression, a return to illusion for the sake of comfort. The intelligent individual learns that solitude is not a problem to solve but a condition to master. Within it lies concentration, emotional discipline, and clarity of intent. Loneliness becomes the environment in which the self consolidates, where power is built without witnesses, where dependence is replaced by alignment, and where the individual stands alone not as a victim of isolation, but as a final product of mind that is fully separated from the need to be held by the crowd.